All right, we are at that point where we can put everything we have built, everything we have learned, everything we have done together into one page. Now, if you haven't done this already, we're going to do it now. So in this video, I'm going to show you how to make a web page using layout, and we're going to use different HTML5 semantics, maybe throw a video in there, something like that. And we're just going to make a regular page. Now, it's not going to look beautiful. It's not going to be full of color because that's not HTML. That's CSS, which we'll learn just after HTML. So first things first, we are going to need to know what tools we want to use. Just like anybody working their trade, they need to figure out what tools they're going to use before they start the job. Now, for me, I'm going to be using VS Code as my editor, Firefox as my browser, and I'm actually going to tinker around with CodePen a little bit just because it's really, really fast for previewing all my different code changes and seeing if anything breaks. Now, at the end of this video is when I'm going to want you to try to do this on your own by memory. Just get as far as you can without having to look up anything, without having to reference anything. Making your brain sweat a little bit is a good thing. Now, if you truly get stuck, obviously look things up. That's totally okay. But try to do it from memory. Now, I'm going to get started with CodePen. So I'm going to open up CodePen, create a new pen, and then I'm eventually going to move my work over to VS Code, and I'll show you sort of how to use both at the same time. And lastly, this video is going to be somewhat fast. It's going to be pretty rapid. I'm not going to stop and talk about every single piece just because we've covered pretty much everything that's going to be in here. So if this video is a little fast for you, that's actually okay because everything is going to be covered in another video at some point. So without further ado, let's go ahead and let's create our first official HTML web page. All right, so I said I'm just going to start with CodePen. So I'm going to open up a new tab, go to codepen.io. And where is new pen? Start coding. And that layout might look a little bit different for you. They change it up from time to time. And I'm going to make this a little smaller and maybe change the view as well. Let's do this view and let's get rid of CSS and JavaScript because we don't need that. So we want to create a page layout, and we are going to figure out before we start coding, and I call this pseudo coding, but we are going to figure out what we need. So we need a navigation. We need a body of some kind. So let's do blog articles. Let's also do a blog subscribe form. Let's maybe put that in a side column. We also need a footer. And that's about it. So that's the overview. And as you can see, as I type here, CodePen will eventually just update with whatever it has, if it can update. So let's go ahead and comment all of this out. And that's just an HTML comment. Let's go ahead and create our first nav. So we could use a div, but we're not going to. We are going to use a nav because that's HTML5 semantics for us. Then let's put our website name in here. Let's give it an H3. Let's call it website name. So maybe coding for everybody. And then under it, let's go ahead and link to different pages. So we are going to create a link in here, and maybe we want to go to about.html and say about us. And then a contact.html, contact us. And let's say this is a regular blog site. So let's just see the whole blog. Let's do this. Call this read blog. Okay, so we have a few links in here. I want to space those out a little bit. So let's go ahead and add an HTML entity and NBSP semicolon. So I'm going to add 3 there. That's okay spacing. That's the way we would do this in HTML. We would do it differently in CSS, obviously. So let's go ahead and now add our footer. So we're going to have a footer down here. And inside of this footer, we want to add a copyright. So copy, and then whatever the year is. So let's say we're from the future, 2030. Copyright 2030, coding for everybody.com. And then you can just put your website name, whatever that website name is going to be. Because that's a copyright, we could actually throw this into a details element. No, I don't like that. I don't like that one bit. No, I don't like how you have to click to open that. So we're going to keep it at that for now. Now let's maybe also add some social media links in here. So let's create a paragraph. That's going to be, let's say that's going to be the second paragraph. And the first paragraph, by the way, Emmet extensions totally work in CodePen. So you can just hit P and then hit Tab and it'll create a paragraph for you. So I'm going to create another one in here for social media links. This one is going to be some Facebook links. So let's put an F there and let's put another, put an F there. And then we'll put Twitter here. So this one's going to be https twitter.com/Caleb Taulin. And that's where you can find me. And let's just do @Caleb Taulin, something like that. And then Facebook, we need a Facebook URL. So I just plopped in a Facebook URL and let's call that Learning to Code Group. And okay, so we have 5 links on our page. 2 are external, 3 are internal, going to other parts of the website that don't exist yet. Okay, so we can cross off nav from our list, get rid of footer from our list. We need blog articles and a subscribe form on a side column. The problem is at this point, we can't just create those. We want them side by side, so we need to do something different with the body. So let's go ahead and create another element in here called main, and this is where your body is going to live. Now we want some content on the left and we want some content on the right. In HTML, there's only one way to do this. We have to use a table. When it comes to CSS, we don't have to use tables anymore and we can make it a lot more responsive, but we're not at CSS yet, so we are going to use a table. And I'm going to give it a border of 1. Now nothing shows up in here, and do we need a T head? No, we don't. And we also don't need a T footer because we're just going to create a section on the left and a section on the right. So let's create a T body, and then we need a table row, and then we're going to need our first cell. So a data cell, and this is going to be left. There we go. And the one on the right is going to be right. Okay, that's not any good. I know we talked about width, so let's add a width of 100%. Hey, that's starting to take shape a little bit. Let's add a width of our right column. Let's make that 25%. So that's pretty small for what we're doing right now, but eventually this is going to be on a bigger screen, so I think that's going to be okay. We might adjust that later. So in the left here, we're going to have our blog. So blog in here. And let's put our subscribe form in here. Cool beans, let's go ahead and clean up our to-do list, blog articles. So we need blog articles still, and we can get rid of that one because we have a note in our code. In fact, we can get rid of all of it because blog articles is what I am going to work on next. So I'm going to go and delete a bunch of extra white space just because I don't want the ugly code. And I'm going to create my first article. So let's create an article, and this is going to have an H4 title. Welcome to HTML. Then I'm going to create a paragraph, put lorem, 6 in here, hit tab. Fills it with 6 words. That was not actually enough at all. Let's do 20. 20 lorem words. Okay, that's better. And then also, let's go ahead and create another paragraph, but this one's going to have a link in it, and that's going to go to, let's go to blog/welcome. What am I doing here? Welcome to HTML.html. Read more. I'm going to put these on new lines so that we can see this sort of in one particular view. All right, so we have a blog post in here. What time was this blog post written? We could say time, maybe April 12th, 2030. We could do something like that. That's HTML5 semantically correct. There's another one. I don't think we touched on this one, but it's small, and that just makes the text a little bit smaller. We could also, what am I doing here? We could also make this an H6. And hello, this thing wants me to basically log in. You don't have to do that. I just clicked outside of that box to get rid of it. So as an H6, it is significantly smaller, but it does come with some extra padding or some spacing. You can see that the text between April 12th and the text was a little more with an H6. So I'm just going to leave this as a small for now. And lastly, at the end of the article, and the nice thing about this is not full of divs, so I don't have to like read where everything is. I know at the end where it's /article, this is the end of the article. So let's go ahead and throw a horizontal rule in here. Let's also add a comment. So that's the ending HTML comment, and this is going to be the starting HTML comment, which is actually done totally wrong because I got a little ahead of myself there, but let's go ahead and call this article section. And yeah, we want to clean that one up. And here we want to say end article section. So now when someone's reading the code, they can just look at the comment and say, oh, there's an ending article section. There's the starting article section. So let's go ahead and collapse that. And let's grab this whole thing. Let's grab all 3 lines here. And let's copy this. Okay, there is the second one. There's the third one. My HR actually moved down to the bottom. I didn't want that at all. What I wanted was to be between articles. So I'm just copying and pasting that. So select Command C or Control C, and then Command V or Control V. And then in here, I'm going to do the same thing. And look at that, we have different sections. So welcome to HTML is the first one. Let's do this one. Welcome to CSS. Change that link as well. Welcome to css.html. And we need one right in the middle. Where are you? I don't know. Welcome to JavaScript, something like that. We could change the dates and the text and stuff as well. So let's say, welcome to js.html. Now we can see that we have a right section in here for our subscribe form. The problem is that it's sort of right in the middle, which, you know, sometimes is a problem, sometimes is not, sometimes that's what you want. I don't want that, so I'm going to use a attribute called v_align, vertical align, and give it top. Now, I know we did not learn about this one, and that's okay. This is one of those times where you're going to be exposed to all sorts of different HTML in the wild, and you're just going to have to go with it. You're just going to have to learn what v_align is, and that's okay. There's just so much out there. It's impossible to learn all of it. But when you do run into something like v_align, don't be afraid to hop on Google and type in HTML5 v_align and just see what comes up. All right, now we need a subscribe form in here. So we know all forms are built with a form element and an action. The action is not going to do anything right now. And the method is going to be, we're going to say get. Now let's create a section in here, a div, and let's also create a label. And this label is going to have an attribute of 4. And we're going to use first name. This element does not exist yet. So let's actually make this bigger. So we have some room to work here. And proof of where we're working. There it is. Okay, so we have a label in here. 4 is first name. And we're going to put first name as the label name. Add a new line. And then we're going to add an input. The type is going to be text. The name is going to be first name. So that's what's going to show up in the URL. The ID is going to be first name so that we can use the for attribute with a label. So if I click here, it selects my form. Let's go ahead and throw this on different lines. Because we are going to be adding lots. Placeholder is equal to your full name. Nope, your first name. We could give it a default value of either nothing or, I don't know, John Smith, something like that. Let's not do that though. We could also give it a class if we were starting to write some CSS, but we're not. And I'm going to close that with XML styling. Next, I want to get out of that div, and I want to create a new div. And this one is going to be for the email. So label 4 is going to be email, not emake. Email address. We'll make a new line. And we make a new line there because the label is an inline element. It's not a block element. So we can actually write things right beside it. And that's a problem because we want these input fields, we want these input fields to be on their own lines. So again, input, hit tab. Let's change this type to email, and let's put this on a few new lines too. Type is email, placeholder is equal to email. Nope, that's a terrible placeholder. You at most likely gmail.com or Yahoo or Hotmail or Live or something like that. We need to give this a name so that when we submit it, it shows up in the URL bar. Let's say this is called email. And the ID is going to be whatever this matches. So the ID and the name don't match at all, but the ID here is going to be email. And lastly, we need a section for a submit button because we can't submit this form right now. We actually forgot two important ones here. So I'm going to select both areas and type required is equal to required. So now this form cannot submit unless both of these sections are filled out. And lastly, let's create a submit button. So button is equal to type submit. We're going to say subscribe. All right, so this is looking a little bit cramped to me, so I'm going to add a little bit of spacing using a BR between the div tags. In CSS, we can use spacing such as margin and padding, but in HTML, we don't really have that option. And lastly, if I change this back to, I don't know, let's say 50%, we can see that first name does not line up with welcome to HTML. Well, why is that? Well, if we look at welcome to HTML or welcome to CSS, because it's the same thing, this is using an H4. So we can actually fake the spacing with HTML with an H4. Hit H4. And there we go. Now, if that doesn't work for you, you can always do H4 and fill it with an empty space and NBSP. And that will very simply bump this down to match this line here. Now, I'm not sure if I like that, so I'm going to delete that. It's good enough for me.